Hey guys, I'm Reagan. I'm one of the co-founders here at Vaer, and today I'm going to be providing an in-depth review of our new A12 Ceremony Watch. I'm going to start things off with an overview of some of the specs and measurements of this new model, and then in the second half of the video I'll provide a bit more of a deep dive into the motivation and inspiration behind the design and why Ryan and I are so excited to bring this into the Vaer lineup. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Alright, so jumping into sizing and specs, this is a 36mm watch. If you've been following Vaer at all over the past couple of months, you'll realize that, Ryan and I are very enthusiastic about this 36mm size. We introduced it last year for the C3 model, which was a 36mm quartz. It was very, very popular, and I think it just fits a unique niche, blending both the kind of the outdoor functionality and usability of a smaller watch, which is great for under a wetsuit or when you're hiking or camping or whatever it is, but it also has a great aesthetic kind of tie-in with the vintage designs that we love so much. So we love 36mm watches. We'll continue to make them. This is just the next one in a line of a lot of new exciting releases. In terms of the other more specific measurements, the lug-to-lug measurement on this watch is 42mm, so that's the lug-to-lug distance from here to here. The total thickness is very appealing for a mechanical watch. One reason for that is it is a manual watch, and there isn't that rotor, which does take up space inside the case, but it does measure at 9.2 millimeters, and that includes the domed sapphire glass. So that's quite a low profile watch when you put all those things together, and I think it wears wonderfully on the wrist. I have an example. This is actually an early prototype, so this is not quite to the same spec and finishing as this final production sample, but this just as a reference as you're watching this video, this is the same dimensions and proportions of the final A12 Ceremony, and so you can get a sense of how it kind of aligns on my wrist. And my wrist measures, if I recall, at 6.75 millimeters, so there you go, that's kind of the way this looks. Jumping in to the next feature, which is, I may have already mentioned it, the hand-wound ETA movement. So that's the other thing, very unique. It's the same movement used in the A12 Dirty Dozen, so both A12s use this hand-wound movement. Not only is it beautifully decorated and appealing from a visual standpoint, particularly in the A12 Ceremony, where we've done a gold plating on all of the interior components of the case. That's really special. The other aspect is it's just a fantastic movement. ETA is kind of the top tier when it comes to movements that are available for micro brands such as Vaer. So really excited to be able to bring this to this watch, and 20,000 plus BPH, so amazing beat rate. We have a 42-hour power reserve and 17 joules. So yeah, really compelling and just beautiful movement. So we're excited to use that. Again, the other thing for those that are not as familiar with what hand wound means or what manual means, or just getting into watches, this is distinctive and different from most Vaer watches that we've put out in the past, as well as most watches in general. So typically you're looking at a quartz, which is just using a battery. It just kind of goes perpetually and is incredibly accurate. The more traditional mechanical watch, what most people would think of and most commonly used nowadays, is like self-winding or automatic, and this is the departure from that, which is manual wound. This is the old technology, so it's the most old-fashioned, the old pocket watch style, where you would literally take it out of your pocket, wind that crown, and that's that action of you winding it. That's what powers the watch. So we're loving it, honestly. It's especially just with this oversized crown that we've used on this design. It's a lot of fun. I'm really getting into the habit of just the manual winding, and I think a lot of customers are going to enjoy it as well. The other thing to mention regarding the manual wound, and also for those that have Vaer watches, is you're probably used to unscrewing, or all of our other watches have a locking screw down crown that you need to unscrew before you change the time. What's nice about the the A12 Ceremony is it uses a push-pull crown while still maintaining that 10 ATM water resistance. And what that means is that you can power the watch. You can give it some winds, just holding it here. You don't have to disengage the gasket. You don't have to pop it out. You can just, whenever you're feeling bored throughout the day, you can just give it a couple of winds. From zero, again, this is just getting into the more nitty-gritty details of kind of the movement operation, is from a watch that has lost all of its power. So after those 42 hours power reserve, it's going to take 20 complete turns. I believe that's 360-degree turns of the crown to fully wind the movement. And if you're not familiar with the manual wound watch, what you'll also get is you'll definitely get tension as you're rotating it, as the gears move, and there's a little bit of friction there. But as you get the spring tighter and tighter, so closer to that full 20 rotations, you're gonna feel more resistance. And that, what we would typically recommend is not to give it the full 20 turns. You can give it 18 or 19. Basically, when you start to feel that resistance, just leave it, because the one thing you don't want to do is overwind the watch, giving it 25 or 30 turns. That could damage the movement. So that's getting a little bit into the more specifics of operation, but anyways, that's what you need to know about the manual movement. The next thing that I mentioned at the beginning is the 10 ATM. So we're really proud of this, and I think it's one of the things that separates this watch as a dress watch. I mean, truly, in terms of aesthetic, it is a dress watch. It looks, classy, but it's 10 ATM. And I think that's what's kind of cool about it, is that we're able to do something in a lot of ways that doesn't look like your traditional Vaer wristwatch, but it still blends that underlying identity of all Vaer watches, which is the kind of use in water and this waterproof functionality. Granted, we don't recommend or don't want you guys taking this watch with the alligator strap in the water, or with any leather strap for that matter. But it is, whether it splashes or steam or, unexpected submersion, all of those things are covered, and that's rare. Even if you're buying, a $20,000-$30,000 Patek, or whatever, maybe one of these, ultra luxury Swiss brands that, has this aesthetic. Obviously, fit and finish on those $30,000 watches is going to be higher than this in a lot of ways. But what's unique is most of those watches, even at that price point, are still rated only 3 ATM. And so to have something at this price point, which is sub $1,000, that, has that aesthetic, has that build quality, has that exhibition case back, has that beautiful movement, and has that, sense of comfort that comes with, a high water resistance rating. I think that's one of the things that really makes this watch special. All right, so now that we've kind of got some of the basic specs and details out of the way, I'm going to spend some time talking about, the design identity of this watch, and kind of the goals, and why we think it's special, and honestly why we think it makes a really compelling purchase. So the first thing to say, and it probably doesn't need a lot of explanation, is that it's gold, which is cool. It's the first gold finished watch that we've produced for Vaer, and we want to do something special as a result of that. It was always an opportunity. It's something that we knew we could do. It was just a matter of how should we do it. And one of the reasons why we wanted to spend, and this is Ryan and I wanted to spend a lot of time making sure we did this watch correctly, is that, particularly over the last 5-10 years, there's been a lot of very flimsy, let's call it, flimsy fashion watches that have shown up. And we wanted to ensure that if we did a watch that was a dress watch that kind of used that aesthetic, that it was clearly something different than, a fast fashion watch. And so we were careful with that. And that's why we wanted to ensure this wasn't quartz. We wanted to ensure that this wasn't something that was, a throwaway piece, something that was just, it looked like gold and whatever, and then we're going to toss it. No, that's not what we had in mind. The movement itself, adds so much additional value. The manual wounding feature, so much additional value. The true, and not just, you can do a cow leather stamp to look like alligator. No, we wanted to make it real. We want to even ensure that the gold plating that we use is heavy gold plating, so that, if you maybe have seen it from past watches or friends' watches, a lot of cheap, Chinese made fashion watches will use a really, really thin coat of this gold plate, and it will silver within, a couple of months or a year. We've used, now granted, this is something actually very important to clarify, I probably should have mentioned this in the specs section, but maybe it's obvious relative to the price point, is this is not solid gold. That would be cool. And we actually, to be honest, we looked into it. We looked into the cost of solid gold, and just our cost, not what we would pass on to the consumer, our cost for a case of this size in solid gold would be $6,000. So if you do the markup and figure out what we would have to price it to bring it to market, obviously that's very expensive. Maybe one day. That'll be the Vaer A12 Grand Ceremony. This is just the simple ceremony, the solid gold version. So yeah, this is not solid gold. It is plate, but as I mentioned, it's a heavy plate, and it's microns. But I think the base level is usually like 0.3 microns, and this is, if I recall, 1.0 microns. So, it's about 3 times thicker, and it is real gold, actually. That's the other thing that is kind of interesting. It is a gold plate. That's electroplating that they use to attach it. But what we've through wear, through rubbing tests, through this other stuff, this is gold that's going to last, and it's going to, maintain that gold color for, years and years and years, decades, and that would be with, daily use. So you're pretty much good to go with this. So yeah, that's kind of the backstory on the gold thing. Is we wanted to create a watch. We wanted to create a dress watch. We wanted something that was true luxury, as at least to the extent that we had the ability to afford it, and also that made sense relative to what Vaer is as a brand. So the way that the gold is finished on the watch is also, I think, really special, and actually it's a big differentiator between the early prototype I have here and the final product. When you're working with gold and gold plating, there's a lot of variance in terms of coloring, yellow versus white versus pink versus rose golds. We wanted something that was very soft, like a whitish gold, and we're really happy with the way the final product worked. You can see actually on an earlier prototype, it's a little bit more yellowed, and we like, obviously, the final product a lot better. The other thing that we think looks absolutely fantastic, and as actually a differentiator for the new A12 Ceremony relative to other Vaer watches in the lineup, is that we've polished the bezel for the first time, and really and actually not only have we polished the bezel, we've also polished the case back, the metal, the gold around that sapphire crystal. So what it really does is it creates this beautiful kind of sandwich effect between, you have this soft satin brushed and beautifully rounded case wall here in this brush finish gold, and then little highlight chamfering on the lugs there that shine and shimmer, which is actually common in all the Vaer watches. But what really I think helps it stand out is then you have this high polished bezel and high polished case back, which really add another layer of kind of luxury and finishing, and I think it really fits this watch incredibly. We like this so much that we'll probably use this aesthetic on other watches in the future, because I really think it comes across well, and I think people are really going to be impressed when they see it. Alright guys, now taking things a little bit deeper in terms of, why did we make this watch, or what's the idea behind it? The main idea realistically is to reinvent or provide kind of a new take or a new interpretation of what a dress watch can represent. The dress watch, and I'm sure we were not anticipating it to be as popular as our dive releases or our field watch releases, just because, in many ways dress watches have fallen by the wayside when it comes to modern collectors and just casual watch buyers in this day and age. And I think there's a few reasons for that. One, obviously there's a lot of interesting stories and functionality going with more sport tool watches, the Rolex Submariners of the world. That's appealing to solid steel. And there's also this kind of issue where within the dress watch market, you're kind of stuck between like a rock and a hard place, I guess would be the expression, because there are a lot of gold-plated cheap fashion watches for $150, $200, Daniel Wellingtons of the world, and then realistically no one really wants those watches. So in order to actually get a real dress watch, you're getting into a very astronomical territory. Vacheron Constantin Patrimony, Patek Calatrava. These watches are, maybe starting around the 20,000 marker, very likely going to be costing $30,000, $40,000 with more advanced complications. So that's a very, very small market of the watch buying community that's buying a true dress watch. And also, even for those that have the money, most of them are still opting for steel sport watches, because there's this added value, I guess you could say, of functionality of, do I want to spend $20,000 if a little bit of water can damage it? That's a pretty scary concept for a lot of people. So with that in mind, with that kind of context of, the dress watch world is kind of in a strange place, and it's kind of unusual, is what if we could find kind of a middle ground? What if we could take kind of the finishing, the aesthetics, the beauty of a true Swiss high-end dress watch, but obviously not charge $10,000 or $20,000 for it, put it still within premium price point, but something that was more attainable, which with this watch we think we've done with an $899 price point, but at the same time also add in a layer of the things that people love with tool watches and sport watches, which is water resistance. So to bring something that looks like a dress watch and then add a 10 ATM water resistance rating, we think is really compelling, and then add on another layer of interchangeable straps. Just like every other Vaer watch, we've integrated the system with quick release, and I think that's kind of a novelty, at least within that world of high-end Swiss dress watches. So what we're trying to do is kind of revitalize or provide a new take on what we think is like a compelling category. Our favorite dress watches certainly are vintage dress watches, those from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I think that's just one, because you can get fantastic deals on them relative to contemporary watches, but just also the aesthetics are, in our opinion, on point. More simple dials, but beautiful arrangements, and really simple but understated elegance in a lot of ways. Looking at this dial design, looking at the composition of our A12 Ceremony, it's foundational in a lot of ways, and we've drawn a lot of inspiration from our favorite vintage watches, specifically in a post-war Patek Philippe models of the Calatrava, reference specifically the 96 reference, the 25-26 reference, and I believe also the reference 570. Those are all models that use the subdial design, and those are all things that we've looked at. We've studied those models and tried to integrate aspects of them into this A12 Ceremony. Is there a lot of novelty or decoration or new things, new inventions within the dial design or within the case? Not specifically. I mean, there's we look at it more as a whole package, but the other way we look at not only this watch but a lot of our watch models as nailing the fundamentals before moving on to advanced techniques, and also as a way of ensuring that if you are a new Vaer customer or someone who's just getting to look into the world of dress watches, in our opinion, the first watch you should purchase is one that nails the fundamentals first. Sure, you can do neon dials or crazy decorations or meteorite styles. These are all interesting ideas and interesting experimentations that are possible within contemporary watches, and so perhaps one day we'll start to integrate some of these ideas. But with this as our first dress watch, just like with our first dive watch, with our first field watch, and so on and so forth, we want to ensure that the customer has something that is truly foundational within their collection and can be a branching off point for new designs and new ideas, whether that's future Vaer models or other models that kind of align with this kind of collector vision that they might have. We often forget, as people within the watch industry and as collectors, and reading and knowing all of these details, is you kind of forget how magical or how compelling this type of design can be, and how it really resonates, and it really can seem magical to someone who's just getting into it, particularly when obviously this is very beautiful, showing the dial and the beautiful sapphire glass, and these types of things are all compelling. But then you flip it over and you see that exhibition case back, you see there's no rotor in there, so you can see the gears moving, and it's all gold plated, and the colors, and it looks fantastic, and it really to me can be that spark of inspiration of showing people why watches are so cool. And obviously this isn't the only watch in the world that has that power, that capacity, but we think that within the Vaer lineup, this is one that really has a lot of excitement within it, and really within the wider market, it's something that for the price point is going to provide a lot of value, a lot of excitement for friends and family when you show this piece off, because it really just is quite simply a beautiful piece. So alright guys, that's pretty much all I have to say about the A12 Ceremony. Again, for more details on this watch and more photos and more references, you can find a lot of that, or almost all of that, on Vaerwatches.com under the product page for the A12 Ceremony. There's not a lot of these. This is a limited batch release, so they might be sold out, we'll see. But if it is popular, hopefully we'll be bringing it back in the future. Again, if you have questions about anything in this video, complaints, feedback, ideas, things that I may have missed, please write a comment below. I appreciate it. I'll definitely take the time to read it and try my best to answer anything in the comments as needed. So again, thanks for watching guys, and we'll be back soon with more videos. Thanks a lot.